Hello, everybody. This is Clinton Spracklen, and I'm here with my esteemed friend.
Eben Mwasanje.
And today we're going to be talking about how conservation looks in Uganda. It's going to be pretty cool. So, Noah, how does conservation look in Uganda?
In Uganda, there's a lot of national parks, game parks. We have one zoo in the capital city. And by national parks and game parks, I'm talking about areas that the government has gazetted and set aside for wildlife. These places are mostly far away from urban centers like the cities and towns, and it is typically overseen by game rangers, or they are typically overseen by game rangers, who make sure animals stay away from human settlements and are taken care of maybe in case of like a dry season when things are when food is hard to come by. They oversee maybe endangered species, and they're also maintained so that tourism can flourish in the country. It's typically how it looks.
Okay. So, you talk about these parks in Uganda. Have you ever gotten the opportunity to experience kind of how that looks, like been on a safari or just been able to observe some animals in the parks at all?
I have, yeah. I had the pleasure of going with my family once for a family vacation. We went down to Queen Elizabeth National Park in Uganda. It's a really beautiful place. We got to stay at one of the lodges where typically the lodges are for tourists, but we were blessed to go and see it. My dad had a friend, and you stay right in the middle of it. The national parks aren't fenced off areas, but the lodges inside the national parks are fenced, and that's because people are living there and they want to keep them safe. The blessing with that is we would drive, say, to a certain area, and then we'd get on a boat. It would drive us to maybe another part of the lake, continue driving. It's a tour, so you get to experience the wildlife. So you might see the hippos in the river or the lake that you're on. You'll see the lions in the distance. The tour guide will instruct you on how to behave and conduct yourself while you're there. Some parts of the lodge, for example, aren't fenced off because there was a hippo trail through it, and so at like 2 or 3 a.m. hippos usually are walking and crossing that path, and so you're encouraged not to be outside. It was a really great experience in general, and it's very one of my favorite things was the air is so fresh. It's out of this world, especially because there's a lot of vegetation. So when you breathe it in, it smells different. It smells very clean, very natural, like you're really close to nature.
Yeah, sounds like you're very in touch with nature there. So on that topic of the parks and the ecotourism that they garner, how do you feel like that affects Uganda, maybe from a economical standpoint or just any kind of standpoint you want to go based off of how
the parks
how the parks ecotourism affects Uganda.
Right. Tourism is a big economic activity in the country. We have a lot of organizations that come in, a lot of them because they're interested in the endangered species and want to study them or track them or just make sure that they garner awareness for them, discourage people from poaching and illegal activities. A lot of people do come in for game and hunting, and they'll do that for maybe the antelopes or impalas or things like that. Not so much for wildlife like lions and maybe the other endangered species. Lions aren't endangered, but things that are pride for the country. You're not encouraged to hunt those. And also, a lot of people just come because it's beautiful. I think the national parks and game parks are some of the best places to just go and like be close to nature because they're so uninhibited by human activity. human settlement. You just get to see a different side of Earth. It helps Uganda a lot because a lot of tourism means a lot of jobs are created. A lot of the park rangers are employed by either the government or by the lodges, to give tours. A lot of locals will create jewelry and beadwork to sell to tourists. It also just creates a lot of insight into what it's like to be in the country, or when you get to meet foreigners. You get insight into their world as well. So it just creates that intercultural relationship. And honestly, tourism also helps the country because Uganda is a developing country, and so it's like each economic activity similar, like tourism, brings in a lot more relative to GDP than it would, say, for a developed country like America. Yeah, so it's a really big and important activity.
Yeah, that's great. So, as we were talking about that, kind of we're talking about some poachers. I was kind of curious as to how common that was, that poachers came along, and what animals do they target?
It's gone down, because there used to be a lot more poaching back in the pre-colonial era, before independence, and that it really dramatically reduced the population of, say, the white rhinos and gorillas and elephants, a lot of elephants, because of the ivory. But at the moment, a lot of international organizations have been set up in the country, and they just oversee. They put trackers on certain animals. They make sure that they meet in case they need to breed. Make sure that the species don't die off. And the government is also very particular on it because of lobbying and things like that, to make sure that interest is taken to ensure the safety of these animals. So, like for example, the Bwindi Impenetrable Forest National Park, there is a conservatory or conservation, for the mountain gorillas there, just to make sure that people aren't just killing them and making game of them. Some tribes do try and poach because they still live off the land, and maybe that's their subsistence, their way of getting food, and so they have to be monitored. But it's not as big of a problem now as it used to be, as far as I'm aware.
So, also on these threats to these endangered animals, do you think that the main threat was this overharvesting or illegal take of animals, or would you, like in the instance of the mountain gorilla, or would you chalk that up to also habitat loss, or would habitat loss even be a thing in
Habitat
Africa?
loss?
Yeah.
I would say it's a good blend of both. It's not solely because poaching is not solely because tourists have come in and tried to kill the animals, but a lot of tribes themselves would actually poach these animals, and so they had to be coerced out of it, or the animals would have to be relocated themselves to different areas. This is a lot of what I learned in school, and so I would say it was mostly the poaching. However, habitat loss, I believe, would have played a factor to a small extent, but mostly poaching.
Yeah, because also Uganda being a developing nation, so which cities are just starting to pop up. So I was just very curious on how that looked, because in America, a lot of as a first world nation, habitat loss is huge for us. So I was just kind of curious what that looked like in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, thank you for asking.
Yeah. So anyway, this has been an interview between me and my esteemed friend Noah Eben Mwasanje. I hope I pronounced that right.
Good.
And yeah, so I hope everybody learned something. I know I've gained some new insights into kind of the situation in Uganda. Thank you, Noah.
You're welcome, Glenn.
And with that, we're going to sign out. Adios.
Bye.